Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It is good to be with you this morning. Ron, sorry to hear that you and Teresa are still sick. He's over on Facebook, or they are, but glad you could join us and the rest of you. So, Daniel, you're so excited about Matthew 16. What is it about Matthew 16? Is it the Petra stuff coming up that because you interact so much with Roman Catholicism? Very interesting. I've never had any student of mine be all this excited about Matthew 16. Well, we are there. And today we are going to see two different groups of men and their reaction to what Jesus is doing. One group is just utterly corrupt. It's sort of the original deep state. As we've talked about, the power and greed of authority as just a regular temptation for so many. And then we're going to see the disciples who are just not getting it, which is rather astounding at times, it seems to me. So anyway, that's what we're going to look at. Good morning, John. Jim says, good morning, Doug, and everyone else. Doug, even when you don't see me live, I always study what I can't live. This is the best Bible I have ever had. Thank you. Excellent. Good to hear. Oh, it is the Petra stuff. Okay. All right. So here's how Matthew 16 starts. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees, having come, tempting or testing, questioned him to show them a sign from heaven. Okay, so we have here the Pharisees, which is the group that we have seen regularly. These are one set of the leaders of the Jews. They are often associated closely with the scribes. They put themselves forth as the correct interpreters of the law of Moses and as the rulers who have the authority to decide what the Jews can and can't do according to the law. And these are the ones that Jesus calls repeatedly hypocrites. They're play actors. They're just putting on a show. They love to be seen in public as pious and so on. Then we have this other group, the Sadducees. And you've probably heard the really catchy saying, the Sadducees are sad, you see, because they don't believe in resurrection. And that is true. We see that in Josephus's writings. We see that in Luke, or at least Luke's writing in Acts 23. We have this little line here in one of Paul's encounters with the leaders. He says, for Sadducees indeed say, there is no resurrection, nor messenger, or that would be angel, nor spirit. So the Sadducees only held to the Pentateuch, that is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis through Deuteronomy. And if you couldn't find it in those texts, they didn't avow it. And there's no resurrection in the Pentateuch, they would say. Therefore, they denied that anything happened to you after you died. There are no angels, they would say, in the Pentateuch. Therefore, they didn't believe in angels. And there was no spirit or Holy Spirit, depending on how you interpret that and so on. So they didn't account for that either. So that's kind of where they're coming from. Interesting that they would get along with the Pharisees, which, as we know, they really didn't. That becomes a point in Acts where Paul divides them by speaking about the resurrection, because this was a hotly debated topic between the two of them. But here they are conspiring together because they have a common enemy. That enemy, of course, is Jesus. So they can set aside their differences for the time being because Jesus is a threat to both groups, And they come together to try to entrap him so that they can have him executed. That's what's going on here. They have come tempting or testing to show them a sign from heaven. So the reason why this request is a form of entrapment is either way, they can use it against him. So they ask for a sign from heaven. Now you may say, well, look at all the signs he's been doing, which are extraordinary, but probably by asking for a sign from heaven, they want something like Moses did, or Elijah, calling fire down from heaven, or lightning out of the heaven, or changing the water into blood, something like that. Maybe from heaven literally means the fire or lightning, but what he's been doing, they're looking for something else. Well, what if he can't do that? Right? Elijah was considered powerful prophet because he did the amazing thing of calling fire down to consume the sacrifices of the prophets of Baal, as well as the one he built, all that, right? So that kind of thing would be impressive, but if he couldn't do it, then they would use that against Jesus and say, see, he's a fraud, he's an imposter, he can't do it. And notice they've already poisoned the well, or tried to, regarding his healings and such. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody explain what I mean by that. They have already tried to explain away or undermine the significance of the healings or the casting out demons. How have they done that? And while I'm waiting for some of you to type, because I know you'll get it, let me move toward this other side. Yeah, very good, Sana. They've already attributed his driving out demons and those things to Satan, trying to taint him. So they put all of those in the category of empowered by Satan. Now, if he can't, say, call fire down from heaven or something like that, they can say, see, he's not a real prophet like Elijah or anybody we should listen to. And what if they expose him as a false prophet? What can they do? Well, they can take the law and manipulate it a bit and have him executed. What if he does do a sign? They can also have him executed. Let me show you. This is from Deuteronomy 13. Moses says, now if a prophet or one who divines by a dream should appear among you and give you a sign or a wonder, right? So a prophet shows up and does a sign, and the sign or the wonder should come about, which he spoke to you, saying, let us go and serve other gods whom you have not known. You see, so a prophet shows up, he performs this amazing work, and then tries to lead Israel to worship other gods. Moses says, you shall not hear the words of that prophet or diviner by that dream, for the Lord God is testing you, to know whether you love the Lord your God with the whole of your heart, with the whole of your soul. Go after the Lord your God, and him you shall fear. You shall keep his commandments. His voice you shall hear. To him you shall be joined. Now notice this. And that prophet or that diviner by dream shall die. So if Jesus does call down fire from heaven or some other sign from heaven, then when they catch him speaking against the temple or anything else that they can twist and manipulate to sound like he is opposing God and leading the people astray, they will use that as warrant to have him executed. You see the trap? They think that they win either way. Can't perform a great sign? Obviously, you're not a prophet. You do perform a great sign, we will twist your words into claiming that you are leading the people astray and will have you executed. Either way, they are going to have him killed. So what's he going to do? He answers and says, evening having come, you say, fair weather, for the sky is red. And at morning, foul weather today, for the sky is red, gloomy. Now, you might look at that and say, what's going on here? He's using a red sky in both situations and yet changing the interpretation. But I asked my favorite AI, and this apparently is a common ancient Mediterranean proverb. At least there is a proverb that's similar, and it continues to this day, even through English folklore. And it's a phrase like this: red sky at night, shepherd's delight. Red sky in morning, shepherd's warning. Oh yeah, Christian's on it. He said sailor. Similar concept for farmers and shepherds, apparently. So Jesus is simply using a commonly stated proverb that they understand. They can interpret the color of the sky in the evening and in the morning and determine what's coming. Yeah, several of you guys know this. So Jesus says, you guys are right. You've learned that. Hypocrites, you indeed know to discern the face of the sky, but the sign of the times you are not able to discern. You are hypocrites. There are plenty of signs. Jesus has been performing sign after sign after sign after sign after sign. Anybody who is not biased by their greed and hunger for power and control and all that, or as we'll see, anyone who doesn't just lack faith, should be able to see this. Now, he's going to rebuke the disciples here in a minute, and they are exercising little faith, as he will say, but they're not hypocrites. They don't claim to be experts in interpreting what's going on, and they're not putting themselves in positions of authority and that kind of thing. The Sadducees and the Pharisees are. You all claim to be a guide to the wise and the blind. Paul's going to throw this at them in Romans 2. You claim to have. Let me just pull that up real quick, because I think it's if anybody should know, it's Paul about what they claimed. He says, behold, this is Romans 2:17. Behold, you are named a Jew and rest on the law, and you boast in God. You know the will and approve the distinctions, being instructed out of the law, and have confidence that you yourself are a leader of blind ones, a light of those in darkness, a corrector of foolish ones, a teacher of babies, having the form of the knowledge and of the truth in the law. So this is the Jewish mindset in the first century, and especially of their leaders, the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees. They convince themselves that they are the leaders of the blind and so on. Jesus here says, you all can discern the signs about the weather, but you cannot see the signs of the times. And that everything the prophets said the Messiah would do, I am doing. And then he says what he has told them already in another setting, an evil and adulterous generation seeks a sign, and a sign will not be given to it, that is, to an adulterous generation, except the sign of Jonah the prophet. And having left them, he went away. So they set a trap for him, and he simply says, you are all incapable of understanding the times. You are evil. You are wicked. And I'm not going to give you a sign except the sign of Jonah, which we now know is the resurrection on the third day. So they are turning up the heat against Jesus, looking for a more obvious way to falsely accuse him so they can execute him, because he is persuading more and more people to follow him, and he is a threat to them. And Jesus calls them out quite harshly. All right, so then his disciples, having come to the other side of the sea, forgot to take loaves. Okay, so they get in a boat and they go over to where Jesus is, but they didn't bring any bread. This has sitcom written all over it here. They're in a boat. They just had this serious encounter with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They get in a boat. They don't have any bread. And Jesus says, beware. Take heed of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. And the disciples reasoning in themselves, saying, because we took no loaves. How do you get from what Jesus said to that conclusion? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. The disciples hear the word leaven. They think bread. And apparently they are so consumed with their forgetfulness of bread. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're afraid they're not going to be able to eat, which actually fits the rest of this account here. But their minds are on bread, and they hear the word leaven, and Jesus says, beware, and suddenly they conclude that Jesus is upset because they didn't bring any bread. You see what I mean by sitcom? Jesus says, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So if it's about bread, then it wouldn't be about the disciples' bread or forgetting bread. It would be about the bread from the Pharisees and Sadducees. But they don't have any bread from the Pharisees. Do you see just where their mind isn't? I mean, this is one of those situations, again, where I would give anything to be able to see the look on Jesus' face. I mean, he just had this intense counter, and he's angry at the hypocrisy and the willful ignorance of the leaders of the Jews. And it's on his mind. He's preoccupied with what they are doing, and he, presumably motivated by love and concern, warns his disciples not to listen to what the Pharisees and the Sadducees are teaching. And you could just see the stern, serious, somber, I don't know, did I say concerned? Look on his face. And then when he hears them talking about not having bread, you can just see the nonplussed look come over his face. At least that's how it reads to me. Jesus, having known, said to them, why reason you in yourselves, you little faithers, because you took no loaves? There's that word again, you little faithers. He made up a word just for these disciples. Your faith is small. You're worried about bread? Why are you worried about bread? Really, guys? Bread? Do you not yet understand? Nor remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many hand baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many baskets you took up? Really? You guys are focused on bread? You think I'm upset because we don't have any food to eat? You were there when I took a few morsels and fed thousands upon thousands of people, and you packed up many baskets full of leftovers. And then just the other day, I did it again. We had just a little bit of food. I multiplied it and fed thousands, and you took many baskets of leftovers. Your faith is so small that the fact that you didn't bring bread has you all worked up, and you think I'm upset about not having bread? Do you think I couldn't just do it again? I mean, this is pretty thick heads by these disciples. Well, I say that. Jesus doesn't actually say you're dumb. He just says your faith is so small. You have seen all of these extraordinary things that I have done again and again, and yet you doubt that I can provide and take care of us. How do you not understand that I did not speak to you of bread, to take heed of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? How can you miss that? I love this line. Then they understood that he did not say to take heed of the leaven of the bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood it, because he pointed out how faithless and foolish they were and laid it out plainly. How? How did you miss this, gentlemen? I laugh, but I suppose both of these situations persist to this day. I mean, I look at the Pharisees and Sadducees, and I see at least a similarity between them and evolutionary scientists. You know what I mean by that? When they look at or look for examples of evolution, they start with the presupposition there is no creator. I think I've mentioned this before, but there's an old series called The Truth Project that one of my former professors, Del Tackett, put out under the umbrella of Focus on the Family. It's really good. It's a little bit dated in some ways now, and certainly the video production, is a little bit dated, but it's really good. And at the time, I used it, very effectively in our church to have some great conversations and even convert some folks to Jesus and so on. And there was an interview. I think it's in the Truth Project. Now that I'm saying this out loud, it makes me question if that's the source of this. Anyway, one of the finders of and articulators of the of DNA was a professor who told his students, first-year students, I think, in university, that as we explore DNA, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically said everything is going to scream at you, this was designed. Because basically the only rational conclusion you could come to as you examine DNA is this didn't happen over time by chance. This had to have been designed. So you need to tell yourself every day when you're looking in the microscope, this was not designed. And then see if you can determine how it evolved, that kind of thing. And that's similar, in my view, to what the Pharisees and Sadducees were doing. It costs me too much to believe that Jesus is the Messiah. It costs me too much of my commitments, my worldview, my freedom to do whatever I want, sin and so on. I can't accept that there is a creator and a designer. Therefore, I'm setting that to the side and saying whatever my mind wants to be the explanation for these things, I will not see that this was designed. So now I've got to find some other explanation. And when too many people in positions of authority and influence start proclaiming designer, then those who have something at risk, if evolutionary theory is discarded, they will rise up and try to shut down, either mock and ridicule, or worse, to again, poison the well for those who would say, no, I think this was designed. And I've said this before, that in the upcoming decades, what I foresee happening is an abandonment of evolutionary theory, and it will be replaced with simulation theory. That's what I think is going to happen. Now we'll see. We'll see if I'm a prophet or not, but that's what I think is going to happen. It's of the same mindset as these Pharisees and Sadducees. They can't see the signs. Then on the other hand, the rest of us, probably at times, are similar to these apostles. The Lord tells us what blessing he is going to pour out on us. He does it more than once, but we still don't see it. We lack the faith that he will do what he says and what he's done many times. This is one of the reasons I constantly tell our fellowship and call you all to count the blessings, to be eyes wide open to the many, 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 many gifts and favors and kindnesses the Lord is pouring out on you, to actually believe they are from the Lord and not just luck and circumstance, or not just the result of God setting the world in motion like a deist would think, but the Lord Jesus actually blessing his people, actually thwarting evil governments, ruling the nations just as he said, giving good gifts to his people, on and on, to really and truly see that and believe that, to help guard against this faithlessness or little faithness that the apostles had and we can have sometimes too. So anyway, it's very important, I think, that we learn from both these groups and be better than both. Someone says, we have a copy. It's great. You think you remember that being the Truth Project? Cool. Yeah, good. Daniel says, I read an article that simulation theory got disproved by mathematics just recently. Yeah, I know. I saw that too. Or I saw one similar. But why would they, if people like Elon Musk want simulation theory to be true, why would they let a little thing like mathematics get in the way? Now, you know how much I am thankful for Elon Musk and appreciate all he's doing, but I don't think he is beyond confirmation bias. So, Gear DFW, he showed us the end from the beginning. That's how we know it's from God and not from man. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Sorry about that. All right. Tomorrow we will start heading toward the Daniel's favorite text. So read the rest of chapter 16 and come prepared to have some good discussion tomorrow, or at least some interaction. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Grace and peace to you.